What if I told you that the ancient world's most magnificent structures, the pyramids, the temples, the monuments that still take our breath away, were all built using the same hidden code? A code not made of words, but of shapes, a silent, universal language written in circles, spirals, and perfect proportions. This is the world of sacred geometry, and it's far more than just an architectural style. It was the very blueprint that guided the rise of civilizations, a cosmic instruction manual that ancient builders from Egypt to Greece, from India to the Americas, used to align their greatest creations with the order of the universe itself. For thousands of years, these geometric principles were woven into the spiritual and scientific foundations of society. They weren't just decorative. They were divine, they were practical, they were profound. Imagine standing in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, knowing its dimensions mirror the Earth's own proportions. Or walking through a Greek temple designed with such harmonic precision that it seems to hum with an energy beyond stone and mortar. These weren't accidents. They were intentional acts of genius, meant to bridge the gap between the human and the holy, between our world and the cosmos. In this video, we're going to uncover that lost wisdom. We'll explore how simple shapes, the circle, the square, the golden ratio, became the building blocks of empires, encoding knowledge about astronomy, mathematics, and the nature of reality itself. We'll see how these patterns repeat not just in architecture, but in art, in nature, and in the deepest beliefs of cultures separated by continents and centuries. This is a journey into the mind of ancient humanity, a chance to see history through an entirely new lens, one where mystery and mathematics meet, where the spiritual and the scientific were never truly apart. So come with me, let's unlock the secrets of the ancients and discover how their vision of a geometrically ordered world still speaks to us today. So what exactly is this hidden language? At its heart, sacred geometry is the belief that certain shapes and mathematical ratios are far more than simple lines on a page. They are considered the fundamental patterns that underpin everything in existence, from the vast spiral of a galaxy to the delicate arrangement of petals on a flower. Ancient cultures observed these same forms repeating in the natural world around them and came to a profound conclusion. If the universe is built on these principles, then these shapes must be sacred. They must be the fingerprints of the divine, a visual language through which the cosmos expresses harmony, order, and creation itself. Think of it as a universal code. A circle, for instance, is one of the most primal and powerful symbols. It has no beginning and no end, representing wholeness, unity, and the infinite cycle of life. Then there's the spiral, seen in seashells and hurricanes, which symbolizes growth, evolution, and the journey of consciousness expanding outward from a single source. These aren't just pretty patterns, they were seen as direct reflections of cosmic laws. Perhaps the most famous example of this is a pattern known as the flower of life. This intricate design, composed of multiple evenly spaced, overlapping circles, has been found carved into ancient temples in Egypt, etched into stone in China, and woven into the art of countless cultures. It's often called the blueprint of creation because from its simple, perfect structure, you can derive every one of the 5 Platonic solid shapes that Plato himself theorized were the building blocks of the physical universe. These solids, the tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron, were each associated with a classical element: fire, earth, air, spirit, and water. This wasn't just philosophy. It was a complete cosmological model where geometry defined the very nature of reality. Another foundational symbol is the Vessica Piscis, formed when two circles of the same radius overlap so that the center of each lies on the circumference of the other. This almond-shaped intersection was profoundly significant. It was seen as the womb of creation, the generative void from which all forms emerge. In fact, within this shape, you can find the precise ratios to construct a perfect equilateral triangle, square, and pentagon, the very templates for the Platonic solids. This made the Vessica Piscis a geometric seed, a starting point from which the complexity of the universe could unfold. It's no surprise that this shape was often used to frame sacred figures in Christian iconography, symbolizing divine birth and the intersection of the spiritual and material realms. This brings us to the thinkers who formalized these ideas. The Greek philosopher Plato, in his dialogue Timaeus, described a divine craftsman who used these perfect geometric forms to fashion a soul for the world, and then the physical elements themselves. He argued that to understand the universe, one must understand geometry. Centuries earlier, Pythagoras and his followers believed that numbers and their relationships were the essence of all things, that the cosmos itself hummed with a hidden mathematical harmony they called the music of the spheres. But this wasn't just a Western concept. In India, the Sri Yantra is a complex geometric diagram used for meditation, composed of interlocking triangles surrounded by concentric circles and lotus petals. It's a powerful tool for focusing the mind, believed to represent the union of masculine and feminine divine energy and the entire matrix of creation. From the pyramids of Giza, aligned with celestial precision, to the mandalas of Tibetan Buddhism that map the journey to enlightenment, sacred geometry was the common thread. It was the bridge, a way for humanity to use the language of mathematics and form to comprehend the infinite, to build structures that resonated with the cosmos, and to touch the divine through the beauty of perfect proportion. Nowhere is this profound belief in a geometric universe more strikingly evident than in the sands of ancient Egypt. Here, sacred geometry was not an abstract philosophy, but a practical, divine science applied on a monumental scale. The Great Pyramid of Giza is perhaps the ultimate expression of this principle, a structure so precisely engineered that it continues to baffle modern experts. Consider this: the pyramid's base perimeter is remarkably close to 1/2 of a minute of latitude, essentially scaling down the Earth's circumference at a ratio of 43,200 to 1. This isn't a coincidence, it's a deliberate act of encoding the planet's proportions into stone, creating a model of the world that aligns the pharaoh's tomb with the very body of the Earth itself. This cosmic mirroring extends to its breathtaking orientation. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy of within 1/15 of a single degree, a feat that seems almost impossible for a civilization working with simple tools. This precision wasn't just for show. For the Egyptians, north was associated with the circumpolar stars, specifically those in the constellation we call Ursa Minor, which they believed were the eternal, undying realm of the gods. By aligning the pyramid's descending and ascending passageways with these specific celestial bodies, the architects were building more than a tomb. They were constructing a machine for resurrection, a launch pad designed to propel the soul of the pharaoh from the earthly plane directly into the heavens to join the immortal gods. This application of geometry was deeply interwoven with their spiritual mathematics. While the Egyptians may not have used the Greek letter pi or pi, they certainly understood its principle. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height is 2 pi, meaning that the builders incorporated this fundamental mathematical constant into their design. Similarly, the golden ratio, approximately 1.618, is found in the proportions of the pyramid's inner chambers and the relationship between the heights of the various pyramids within the Giza complex. These ratios were believed to be sacred because they were the same patterns observed in nature, in the growth of plants, the spiral of shells, and the proportions of the human body. By using them, the Egyptians were infusing their architecture with the very essence of creation, making it a living, breathing part of the cosmic order. This philosophy extended far beyond the pyramids to their vast temple complexes. The Temple of Karnak, for instance, is a masterclass in sacred geometry applied for spiritual amplification. Its design is based on a series of harmonic proportions, where the size and spacing of columns, the height of ceilings, and the dimensions of courtyards were all calculated to create specific acoustic and energetic effects. Priests performing rituals in the hypostyle hall, surrounded by towering columns carved to resemble papyrus plants, would have experienced their chants resonating and echoing in a powerful way. This wasn't an accidental byproduct of architecture, it was the entire point. The geometry was engineered to amplify sound and, by extension, the power of prayer, creating a resonant chamber that could elevate human invocation into something capable of reaching the divine realm. Every aspect of Egyptian civilization, from the grandest monument to the layout of a city, was governed by this geometric worldview. Their urban planning often followed grid patterns aligned to the cardinal directions, reflecting the belief that human society should mirror the order of the cosmos. Even their hieroglyphs and art were steeped in geometric symbolism, with specific shapes and proportions used to denote different deities and cosmic principles. For the ancient Egyptians, geometry was the language the gods used to build the universe. By speaking that language through their architecture and art, they were participating in the ongoing act of creation, maintaining Maat, the divine order of the universe, and ensuring the stability of their world and their place within the cosmic cycle of life, death, and rebirth. While the Egyptians were mastering their geometric alignment with the stars, another powerhouse of civilization was rising between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, building its own breathtaking monuments to the heavens. In Mesopotamia, the birthplace of cities, the Ziggurats stood as the ultimate expression of sacred geometry's power. These weren't just temples, they were artificial mountains, colossal stepped pyramids of baked brick, towering over the flat plains. Their design was a profound geometric statement. Each level was a perfect square or rectangle, decreasing in size as it rose, creating a towering staircase aimed directly at the sky. This wasn't random construction. The precise proportions of each tier, the calculated angles of the stairways, and the exact orientation of the entire structure were all meticulously planned. The ziggurat was a symbolic bridge, a geometric ladder connecting the human world below with the divine realm of the gods above. A place where priests like those dedicated to Marduk, the patron god of Babylon, could perform rituals to commune with the deities and ensure the favor of the heavens upon the land. This architectural ambition was fueled by an astonishingly advanced mathematical mind. Thanks to the thousands of cuneiform tablets they left behind, we know that Babylonian mathematicians were true pioneers. They developed a base 60 numeral system, a choice that still echoes in our modern world every time we look at a clock with its 60 seconds and 60 minutes. This system was incredibly sophisticated, allowing them to perform complex geometric calculations for a stunning variety of practical purposes. They used geometry to chart the movements of planets and stars with remarkable accuracy, creating the foundations of Western astronomy. They employed it for precise land surveying, essential for agriculture and taxation in a thriving empire. And most importantly for our story, they used these geometric principles to plan and build their cities. Mesopotamian urban planning was a masterclass in imposing order upon the world. Cities like Babylon and Ur were laid out in vast, grid-like patterns, with long, straight processional streets and canals cutting through residential blocks at right angles. This wasn't merely for efficient traffic flow, it was a conscious act of cosmic mimicry. The city itself was designed as a microcosm of the universe, its streets and walls aligned with celestial events like the solstices or the path of certain stars. They believed that by building their world according to the same geometric and astronomical order that governed the cosmos, they could channel divine harmony into their society, protecting it from the ever-present threat of chaos. This idea of the city as a sacred, ordered space would become one of Mesopotamia's most enduring gifts to future civilizations, profoundly influencing the Greeks, the Romans, and even our modern concepts of urban design. We can see this beautiful fusion of art, geometry, and divine intention in one of Babylon's most magnificent treasures, the Ishtar Gate. This wasn't just an entrance, it was a monumental statement covered in glazed bricks of a vibrant blue, a color meant to represent the heavens. Adorning these walls were bas-reliefs of animals, bulls, and dragons arranged in precise, repeating rows. These creatures were symbolic representations of major deities, and their geometric arrangement was far from decorative. The patterns formed a kind of protective talisman, a mathematically ordered invocation of divine power intended to safeguard the city. Walking through that gate was meant to be a transformative experience, moving from the mundane world outside into a sacred space where geometric perfection and divine presence were made physically manifest, reinforcing the power and piety of the king and the stability of the empire. The Mesopotamian legacy shows us that sacred geometry was never just an esoteric spiritual pursuit. For them, it was the fundamental operating system for civilization itself. It was applied mathematics in service of the state, the divine, and the daily lives of people. The same geometric principles that oriented a ziggurat toward a god were used to ensure a farmer's field was measured fairly for tax purposes. The same astronomical observations that dictated a temple's alignment were used to create the calendars that scheduled planting and harvest. This seamless integration of the sacred and the practical, of cosmic order and earthly law, is perhaps their greatest innovation. They demonstrated that geometry was the essential tool for building not just structures, but a functioning, harmonious society. A blueprint for civilization that would be studied and admired for millennia to come. Yet while the Mesopotamians used geometry to impose order on an empire, the Greeks performed an even more revolutionary act. They turned inward and used geometry to impose order on the mind itself. For them, the perfect forms weren't just tools for building cities, they were the very essence of reality, the immutable truths hiding behind the fleeting, imperfect world we perceive with our senses. This profound shift began with a mysterious figure, Pythagoras. He didn't just see numbers as a way to count things. He taught that numbers were the things themselves, that the entire cosmos was constructed from mathematical relationships. To him and his followers, the world was literally made of mathematics, and the harmonies we find in music, the very reason we call an octave harmonious, were a direct audible expression of these perfect, invisible numerical ratios. They believed the planets in their orbits produced a celestial symphony, a music of the spheres, inaudible to human ears but mathematically perfect, the universe's hidden geometric soundtrack. This philosophical revolution found its ultimate expression in the work of Plato, who took these ideas and built an entire cosmology around them. In his dialogue Timaeus, he presents a creation story unlike any other. The universe is not fashioned by a capricious god but by a divine craftsman, a demiurge, who looks to the eternal world of perfect forms and uses them as a blueprint. And what were these perfect forms? They were the 5 Platonic solids, Each of these unique shapes, the tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron, was assigned to a fundamental element. Fire was the sharp tetrahedron, earth the stable cube, air the octahedron, water the multi-faceted icosahedron, and the dodecahedron was reserved for the shape of the cosmos itself, the container for all of creation. This was sacred geometry as the fundamental theory of everything, a complete metaphysical system where the chaos of the physical world was given order and meaning through the application of perfect, eternal geometric forms. But this wasn't just abstract philosophy confined to the academy. It was a guiding principle that was literally set in stone for all to see and experience. The Parthenon, standing majestically on the Acropolis, is perhaps the most famous physical manifestation of this Greek geometric idealism. Its architects didn't just build it, they composed it, using the golden ratio as their musical scale. The ratio of its length to width, the height of its facade to its width, even the spacing between its columns, all are meticulously calculated to approximately 1.618 to 1. Why go to such incredible trouble? Because they believed that this specific proportion was not merely aesthetically pleasing to humans, it was inherently divine. A temple built with these harmonic ratios would resonate with the same cosmic order that governed the planets, making it a perfect vessel for the goddess Athena. It was designed to be a tuning fork for the human soul, its geometry subtly elevating the consciousness of anyone who entered, aligning their spirit with the harmony of the universe. This grand synthesis of thought and practice was ultimately codified by Euclid in his monumental work, The Elements. This wasn't just a math textbook, it was the logical culmination of centuries of Greek thought, organizing all known geometric knowledge into a single, irrefutable system built upon axioms, postulates, and proofs. For over 2,000 years, it was the second most printed book in the world, second only to the Bible. Euclid provided the rigorous, logical framework that allowed the mystical insights of Pythagoras and the cosmic visions of Plato to be tested, applied, and passed down through generations. He gave the world the tools to not only contemplate the divine through geometry, but to replicate it with precision, establishing a method of deductive reasoning that would become the bedrock of all Western science. The Greek legacy is therefore a unique and powerful duality. They took the sacred geometry of earlier empires and infused it with a relentless rationalism, creating a new paradigm where beauty was truth and truth was beauty. They taught us that the universe is fundamentally knowable because it is fundamentally mathematical, and that by studying the language of geometry, we are not just learning about angles and shapes, we are learning the native tongue of reality itself. This fusion of the spiritual and the scientific, the artistic and the analytical, created an intellectual blueprint that would lie dormant for centuries only to be rediscovered during the Renaissance, fueling a rebirth of art, architecture, and discovery that would shape the modern world. They handed us the compass and the square and taught us that with these tools, we could not only build better temples but also map the very architecture of the cosmos. But what is it about this specific number, 1.618, that seems to whisper from the very heart of creation? The answer might lie not in the quarries of ancient builders, but in the world around us, in the very patterns of life itself. This is where the golden ratio transcends mathematics and becomes something almost magical, a fundamental principle woven into the fabric of nature. You can find it in the elegant spiral of a nautilus shell, where each chamber grows in perfect proportion to the one before it. You see it in the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower's head, spiraling out from the center in opposing directions, with the number of spirals often being consecutive numbers in the Fibonacci sequence. It's present in the branching of trees, the unfurling of fern fronds, and even in the proportions of our own bodies. The ratio of the length of your forearm to your hand, for instance, often approximates this divine number. Ancient observers of the natural world noticed this pervasive pattern and reached a profound conclusion. If this ratio is the blueprint for so much beauty and efficiency in nature, then it must be a signature of the divine, a universal standard for harmony and growth. To incorporate it into human art and architecture was to tap into that same sacred source code, to build in a way that felt inherently right, balanced, and alive. This brings us to the remarkable mathematical sequence that acts as a hidden key to unlocking this ratio. Centuries after the Parthenon was built, an Italian mathematician named Leonardo Fibonacci introduced a simple numerical series to Europe: 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on, where each new number is the sum of the two that came before it. While Fibonacci is credited with its popularization, the sequence itself was known far earlier to ancient Indian mathematicians like Pingala and was used in Sanskrit poetry for its melodic patterns. The true magic of this sequence reveals itself when you take any number and divide it by the one that immediately precedes it. As the numbers grow larger, this result gets closer and closer to that mystical number, 1.618, the golden ratio. This isn't just a neat mathematical trick, it's a fundamental relationship. The Fibonacci sequence provides a whole number roadmap that approximates the irrational golden ratio, making it a practical tool for builders and artists who sought to infuse their work with this natural harmony without getting lost in complex calculations. Armed with this understanding, we can look back at ancient masterpieces with new eyes and see this principle in action far beyond the Greek world. While the Great Pyramid of Giza's dimensions famously incorporate both pi and the golden ratio in the relationship between its base and height, this was just the beginning. The design of the Parthenon is so saturated with the golden ratio that it appears in the overall floor plan, the facade, and even the detailed sculptural elements within its pediments. But the application was truly universal. The architects of ancient Indian temples used these proportions to determine the precise dimensions of mandalas and shikaras, believing it would create a structure that resonated with cosmic energy. The layout of entire cities, from Rome to many ancient Chinese capitals, was often based on geometric grids that incorporated these harmonious ratios, creating urban spaces that felt both orderly and organically connected to a greater natural law. Even the pages of some of the world's oldest sacred texts, like certain illustrated Hebrew manuscripts, were designed with margins and text blocks that conform to the golden rectangle, a subtle yet powerful way to make the very vessel of the word feel divinely proportioned. This enduring appeal across time and culture points to something deep within the human experience. The golden ratio seems to tap into a fundamental aspect of human perception and psychology. Studies have suggested that people consistently find faces and shapes that exhibit these proportions to be more attractive and pleasing to the eye. It creates a sense of balance that is dynamic rather than static, a feeling of orderly progression that mirrors the growth patterns we are subconsciously attuned to in the natural world. For the ancients, this wasn't a dry scientific fact. It was experiential proof that they had discovered a universal law of beauty. Using the golden ratio was a way to create art and architecture that didn't just represent the divine, but actually evoked the same feeling of awe, balance, and spiritual resonance that one feels when standing in an ancient forest or looking up at the spiral arm of a galaxy. It was their method of building a bridge between the earthly and the eternal, crafting stones and spaces that sang with the same silent, perfect music that governs the universe. This journey into the universal language of geometry takes a profound and beautiful turn as we travel east, where in the spiritual traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism, These principles were not just used to build structures, but to map the entire cosmos and the path to liberation itself. At the heart of this practice is the mandala, a Sanskrit word meaning circle. But a mandala is so much more than a simple shape. It is a breathtakingly intricate geometric diagram, a cosmic map, a spiritual blueprint, and a powerful tool for meditation. These intricate designs, often bursting with concentric circles, squares, and lotus petals, are not arbitrary. They are meticulously constructed to represent the universe in its perfect, ordered form, a divine architecture that serves as a guide for the human soul on its journey from the outer layers of illusion to the enlightened center of pure consciousness. The ultimate expression of this sacred architectural blueprint is found in the monumental temple complexes of Southeast Asia. Take Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the largest religious monument on Earth. From above, its design is revealed not as a random collection of buildings, but as a giant stone mandala meant to be walked. Its towering central spire represents the mythical Mount Meru, the sacred axis mundi believed to be the center of all universes in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. Surrounding it are concentric rectangular galleries and a massive moat, symbolizing the mountain ranges and oceans that ring the cosmic world. A pilgrim walking through Angkor Wat is not merely touring a ruin. They are symbolically traveling from the outer world of form and illusion through progressively more sacred geometric layers toward the inner sanctum, the symbolic summit of the mountain and the core of their own being. This same principle animates the great Buddhist stupa of Borobudur in Indonesia. This massive structure is a three-dimensional mandala in stone. Pilgrims ascend its 9 stacked terraces in a spiral walking meditation, moving through levels that represent the stages of Buddhist cosmology, from the world of desires at the base to the formless world of pure spirit at the top. The entire journey is a physical enactment of a geometric spiritual path, where architecture becomes a guide for inner transformation. Perhaps the most powerful and concentrated example of this geometric energy is the Sri Yantra, a stunningly complex figure composed of 9 interlocking triangles. 4 of these triangles point upward, representing the masculine divine energy of Shiva, while 5 point downward, symbolizing the feminine divine energy of Shakti. Their precise intersection creates 43 smaller triangles, all contained within a multi-layered circular and square enclosure. The Sri Yantra is not just a symbol to be looked at, it is a potent energy system to be contemplated and visualized. Meditators focus their gaze and their mind on this precise geometry, starting from the outer gates and journeying inward toward the central point, or bindu, which represents the unified source of all creation. This intense focus on the perfect, interlocking forms is believed to still the chaotic waves of the mind and actually generate spiritual energy, aligning the individual's consciousness with the fundamental geometric patterns of the universe. It is a tool for experiencing the divine interplay of creation, not just theorizing about it. This application of sacred geometry reveals a dynamic, living philosophy. In these Eastern traditions, geometry was far more than a set of rules for building static temples. It was a dynamic science of consciousness, a practical technology for personal and communal transformation. The creation of a sand mandala by Tibetan Buddhist monks is the perfect example of this fleeting, dynamic beauty. Over days or weeks, monks painstakingly place millions of grains of colored sand into an incredibly detailed geometric pattern, a process that is itself a deep, silent meditation. Upon its completion, after ceremonies and prayers, the entire magnificent creation is swept up and poured into a flowing body of water. This ritual powerfully drives home a central lesson. The true value is not in clinging to the beautiful, perfect form, but in the mindful process of its creation and the impermanent wisdom it represents. The geometry is a vehicle for cultivating focus, compassion, and a profound understanding of the transient nature of all things. This enduring, living practice, from the grandest temple to the most temporary sand painting, shows us that sacred geometry in the East was never a lost ancient secret. It remains a vibrant, powerful language, a way to blend art, science, and spirituality into a single, unified path for understanding the architecture of the universe and finding one's rightful place within its divine and harmonious order. Across the ocean, under the dense canopy of the Mesoamerican rainforest and on the high plateaus of central Mexico, another chapter in the story of sacred geometry was being written with breathtaking ambition. The Maya and the Aztecs developed their own profound relationship with the cosmos, one that was expressed not through philosophy alone, but through a stunning fusion of architecture, astronomy, and mathematics that transformed their entire world into a living, breathing celestial calendar. Their cities were not just places to live, they were vast stone cosmograms meticulously aligned to the rhythms of the heavens. Nowhere is this more awe-inspiring than at Chichen Itza, the magnificent Mayan city. Here, the Pyramid of El Castillo stands as a masterwork of geometric and astronomical engineering. This is no simple four-sided structure. It has 4 stairways, each with 91 steps. When you add the one final step to the top platform, you get 365 steps in total, one for each day of the solar year. But the genius doesn't stop there. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, a spectacular event unfolds. As the sun sets, the interplay of light and shadow across the step terraces creates the illusion of a massive serpent slithering down the side of the northern staircase, connecting with a stone serpent head at the base. This was the embodiment of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent deity. This wasn't just a clever trick of the light, it was a meticulously calculated demonstration of power and knowledge. The pyramid's precise orientation and geometric design allowed the Maya to visually announce the arrival of the equinoxes, critical dates for their agricultural cycle, and to physically manifest their belief that the celestial and earthly realms were intimately, geometrically connected. This deep integration of number, shape, and sky was fundamental to their entire worldview. Their sophisticated calendar systems were built upon a base 20 numerical system, or Videsimal system, which is why the numbers 13 and 20 held such profound cosmological weight. The Tzolk'in, their 260-day sacred calendar, is the product of 13 times 20. They perceived time not as a linear progression but as a series of interlocking, sacred cycles, each governed by its own spiritual energy. The geometry of their pyramids, with their multiple tiers and steps, often physically represented these cycles. A pyramid might have 13 levels, symbolizing the 13 levels of heaven in some Mayan traditions, or its layout might reflect the cycles of the Venusian year, which they tracked with astonishing accuracy. Every number, every angle was a syllable in their ongoing conversation with the gods. Further north, in the Valley of Mexico, the Aztecs inherited and expanded upon this ancient Mesoamerican wisdom at their awe-inspiring city of Teotihuacan. Walking down the Avenue of the Dead, with the massive Pyramid of the Sun on one side and the Pyramid of the Moon on the other, you are walking through a landscape deliberately engineered to mirror the cosmos. The city's grid is precisely aligned 15.5 degrees east of true north, an orientation that directly corresponds to the setting of the Pleiades star cluster, a hugely significant celestial marker for them. The sheer scale and geometric precision of these structures is humbling even today. The base of the Pyramid of the Sun is almost exactly the same size as the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza, raising fascinating questions about a potential universal understanding of harmonic proportions. The Aztecs believed their world was born here at Teotihuacan, in a mythical time when the gods sacrificed themselves to create the fifth sun, the sun under which we now live. By building their city with such exacting geometric and celestial alignment, they were quite literally rebuilding the place of creation, maintaining the cosmic order, and ensuring the sun would continue its journey across the sky. This sacred knowledge was preserved and communicated through vibrant art. Although many of their books or codices were destroyed, surviving examples like the Dresden Codex reveal pages filled with complex grids, numerical calculations, and geometric patterns used for divination and tracking planetary cycles. Murals showed deities adorned with geometric designs that symbolize their domain over specific aspects of time and nature. A spiral might represent a whirlwind or the passage of time, while intricate step-fret patterns could depict the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth. For these cultures, geometry was the essential tool for decoding the will of the gods. It dictated when to plant crops and when to harvest. It guided military campaigns and coronations, and it formed the bedrock of their most important rituals. Their achievements stand as a powerful testament to the human drive to find order in the cosmos, proving that from the jungles of the Yucatan to the highlands of Mexico, the language of sacred geometry was spoken with a fluency and brilliance that continues to captivate and inspire us today. Centuries later, and a world away from the steamy jungles of Mesoamerica, a new architectural revolution was rising towards the heavens, one that would use the same ancient language of geometry to express an entirely different, yet equally powerful spiritual vision. This was the Gothic era in medieval Europe and its cathedrals, those breathtaking stone forests of pointed arches, flying buttresses, and shimmering glass stand as some of the most sophisticated applications of sacred geometry the world has ever seen. For the master builders of this age, geometry was far more than a construction tool. It was a form of prayer, a divine language given by God to humanity. They believed that by building with the same perfect proportions that govern the cosmos, they could create a vessel on earth so harmonious, so radiant, that it would become a true gateway to heaven, a microcosm of the divine realm that could elevate the soul of every person who stepped inside. The entire design process began with a single sacred shape, the Vessica Piscis. This almond-shaped form, created by the overlap of two circles, was the generative seed from which the entire cathedral would grow. Builders would use it to set out the precise proportions of the floor plan, the harmonious relationship between the width of the nave and the height of the vaulted ceilings, and the majestic sweep of the arches. This was not a random choice. The Vessica Piscis was deeply symbolic of Christ, often framing him in medieval artwork, representing the intersection of the divine and the human. By using this shape as their foundational blueprint, the architects were embedding the very essence of their faith into the stones from the very first moment of conception. The golden ratio was also tirelessly employed, dictating the perfect proportions between various elements of the structure, ensuring that every part of the building related to the whole in a way that felt instinctively beautiful and divinely ordered to the worshipper below. Nowhere is this geometric genius more brilliantly displayed than in the crowning glory of the Gothic cathedral, the rose window. These immense circular windows are not just beautiful stained glass, they are massive, intricate geometric diagrams made of stone and light. Chartres Cathedral boasts perhaps the most famous examples. Their design is a complex interplay of circles, squares, and trefoils, often based on the number 12, symbolizing the 12 apostles and the heavenly Jerusalem. As sunlight streams through these windows, it doesn't just illuminate the interior, it is transformed. The geometry of the window acts as a divine filter, breaking the pure white light of God into the myriad colors of creation, casting a kaleidoscope of sacred patterns and symbols across the floor and walls. This was a deliberate, powerful metaphor. The physical light passing through the geometric window was a symbol of divine grace, transmitted through the perfect order of God's creation, to illuminate the souls of the faithful within. The entire space becomes a dynamic, living representation of how spiritual truth is mediated through the harmony and beauty of the mathematical universe. This sacred coding extended to the very orientation of the building. Gothic cathedrals were almost universally built with their altars at the east end, precisely so that on the morning of the spring equinox, the rising sun would beam directly down the central axis of the nave, flooding the choir and altar with light. This annual event tied the man-made structure to the cosmic cycles, a powerful reminder that the church on earth was in perfect alignment with the heavens above. The guilds of masons who held this secret knowledge were more than just laborers. They were the guardians of an ancient wisdom tradition passed down through generations. Their compasses and squares were not just tools but sacred instruments, symbols of the moral and cosmic order they sought to manifest. They encoded these geometric secrets into the fabric of the building, knowing that most would never consciously understand the math, but believing that every person would feel its effects, a sense of awe, peace, and overwhelming beauty that would draw their hearts and minds upward toward the divine. In these stone mountains of light and geometry, the medieval world achieved its greatest ambition: to make the invisible visible and to give humanity a tangible taste of heaven's perfect harmony. This profound theological principle gave rise to one of the world's most mesmerizing and intellectually sophisticated art forms, because depicting the human form or any living creature in a sacred space was seen as a potential distraction from the worship of the formless, infinite divine. Islamic artists and architects turned to the pure language of mathematics and nature for their inspiration. They didn't see this as a limitation, but as a divine challenge, a calling to reveal the underlying order and beauty of Allah's creation without directly representing it. The result was an explosion of intricate geometric patterns, arabesques, and tessellations that did far more than decorate. They served as visual theology, a breathtaking meditation on the unity, infinity, and perfect order of God. To step into a place like the Alhambra Palace in Granada, Spain, is to be immersed in a world entirely composed of this sacred mathematical language. Every surface, from the soaring ceilings down to the floors, is alive with an infinite dance of interlocking shapes. Complex star polygons blossom into elaborate networks of lines, circles, and squares weave together in perfect harmony, and patterns repeat and radiate outward with a precision that feels both human and superhuman. These are not random decorations. They are meticulously planned expressions of advanced mathematical principles, often based on the division of the circle and the repetition of a single, simple cell to create seemingly endless complexity. This repetition is deeply intentional. It symbolizes the infinite nature of Allah, a pattern that can theoretically continue forever, just as God's creation has no end. The sheer complexity of these designs, which often conceal their starting and ending points, invites the viewer into a state of deep contemplation, encouraging the mind to get lost in the pattern and, in doing so, to lose itself in thought of the divine. What makes this artistic tradition so unique is its beautiful synthesis of three core elements: geometry, calligraphy, and stylized flora. While the geometric patterns speak of cosmic order, the flowing Arabic script brings the direct word of God into the space, quoting verses from the Quran that speak of Allah's majesty, mercy, and oneness. This sacred calligraphy is itself a form of art, with its curves and angles often harmonizing with the geometric grid surrounding it. Then, weaving through both are arabesques, elaborate, scrolling patterns of stylized leaves, vines, and flowers. These are not attempts to realistically depict nature, but rather to capture its essence, its rhythm and life force. They represent the perpetual rhythm of growth and decay within the natural world, another manifestation of divine order. Together, this triad creates a holistic aesthetic universe. Geometry reflects the abstract mind of God, calligraphy conveys his revealed word, and the floral patterns celebrate the vibrant life of his creation. It is a complete system designed to engage the intellect and the soul simultaneously. This approach transformed architecture into a direct act of worship. The master craftsmen who designed these patterns saw their work as a form of devotion, a way to honor God by imitating the inherent geometry of his universe. Using only a compass and a straight edge, they executed designs of staggering complexity that required a deep understanding of symmetry, proportion, and tessellation. This wasn't just art for art's sake, it was a spiritual discipline. The process of creation itself was a meditation, and the resulting space was engineered to induce a specific state of mind in the worshipper, one of peace, awe, and profound reflection on the unity that lies behind the apparent diversity of the world. The geometric patterns serve as a visual reminder that despite the endless variety we see in creation, from snowflakes to galaxies, there is a single, unifying source and a consistent set of mathematical laws governing it all. The influence of this geometric vision extends far beyond the mosque and the palace, reaching across cultures and centuries to impact art and design worldwide. The intricate tilework and geometric layouts of Islamic gardens, often with channels of water dividing them into 4 parts, were conceived as earthly reflections of the paradise described in the Quran, a place of perfect order, beauty, and harmony. This legacy demonstrates a powerful truth, that mathematical precision and spiritual longing are not opposed but can be beautifully fused. Islamic art uses the clarity of geometry to express the ultimate mystery of divine unity, creating a timeless language that transcends cultural and religious boundaries to speak directly to the human fascination with pattern, order, and the hidden structures that make our universe not just functional, but breathtakingly beautiful. While the great cathedrals of Europe reached for the heavens with stone and glass, across the Atlantic, a different but no less profound expression of sacred geometry was being inscribed directly upon the earth itself by the indigenous peoples of North America. For tribes like the Hopi and the Navajo, geometric patterns were not confined to grand monuments. They were a living, breathing part of daily ritual, art, and spiritual practice, serving as a vibrant language to communicate with the natural and spiritual worlds. This is powerfully embodied in the Navajo tradition of sand painting, a sacred and ephemeral art form of breathtaking complexity. Medicine men, or hatalii, would carefully pour naturally colored sands, crushed minerals, and pollen onto the ground to create intricate, temporary mandalas for use in healing ceremonies. These were not mere pictures, they were dynamic, geometric portals. Each line, curve, and symbol was a precise representation of a spiritual being, a cosmic event, or a force of nature. The patient would sit at the center of this sacred geometry, absorbing its healing energy as the chants of the medicine man activated the power within the patterns. After the ceremony, in a profound lesson on impermanence and respect, the entire painting was destroyed, its healing purpose fulfilled, and its energy returned to the earth. This practice shows a worldview where geometry is a temporary, focused conduit for spiritual power, a tool for restoring balance and harmony to an individual, and by extension to the entire community. This deep connection between pattern and purpose extended into their exquisite craftsmanship. Hopi potters, for instance, often decorate their vessels with precise, repeating geometric motifs. A series of sharp, angular lines might represent rainfall needed for the crops, while a pattern of interconnected squares could symbolize the fields themselves. A spiraling design might echo the path of a whirlwind or the journey of the soul. These were not arbitrary decorations, they were prayers and stories rendered in clay, a way of encoding gratitude, hope, and cultural knowledge into objects used in everyday life. Similarly, the intricate weaving of Navajo rugs often features diamond patterns, zigzags, and stepped motifs that are more than just aesthetically pleasing. They are symbolic representations of landscapes like the four sacred mountains that mark the Navajo homeland, or of spiritual concepts such as the path of life. In this way, the act of creating these geometric patterns became a meditative practice, a way for the artist to align their own actions with the inherent order of the world around them, weaving harmony and protection directly into the fabric of their existence. On a far grander, almost unimaginable scale, this geometric impulse was expressed through massive earthworks that transformed the very topography of the continent. The most stunning example is the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, a 1,300-foot-long earthen effigy of a serpent uncoiling across a plateau. From the ground, its full form is elusive, but from above, its precise geometric construction becomes awe-inspiring. The serpent's body consists of 7 distinct curves, and its head aligns perfectly with the summer solstice sunset, while the coils may also point to other significant lunar events like the winter solstice moonrise. This was not a fort or a village. It was a colossal, 3-dimensional calendar and celestial observatory built from soil and stone. The builders, ancestors of the fort ancient culture, used the geometry of the serpent's form to create a permanent alignment with the cosmos, anchoring the cycles of the sun and moon into the landscape itself. It served as a communal focal point for ceremonies that marked these critical turning points in the year, guiding agricultural activities and reinforcing the community's connection to the celestial order. The serpent, a nearly universal symbol of transformation and life force, was rendered in earth on a scale that could only be fully apprehended by the spirit, a testament to a deep understanding of both geometry and astronomy. This holistic worldview, where the cycles of life, the directions of the compass, and the structure of the community are all interconnected, finds its perfect symbolic expression in the medicine wheel. Found in various forms among many plains tribes like the Lakota, the medicine wheel is a powerful geometric symbol built from a central cairn of stones with lines or spokes radiating outward to form a circular outer ring. This simple yet profound structure is a complete cosmological model. The 4 spokes often represent the 4 cardinal directions, each associated with a season, a color, an animal, and a stage of human life. The circular perimeter symbolizes the cycle of life, the path of the sun, and the interconnected nature of all things. A person might walk or pray within this wheel to seek balance, to understand their place in the universe, or to mark a rite of passage. It is a tool for teaching, healing, and meditation, demonstrating that the most powerful sacred geometry is often the simplest, using basic forms to encapsulate the most complex truths about existence, harmony, and our relationship to the infinite cosmos that surrounds us. These traditions, preserved through oral history and continued practice, offer a crucial reminder that sacred geometry is not a relic of a lost past but a living wisdom, deeply relevant today for its powerful emphasis on balance, interconnectedness, and living in respectful harmony with the natural world. After centuries where much of this ancient geometric wisdom was preserved in scattered manuscripts and the guarded traditions of Mason guilds, Europe experienced an intellectual earthquake that would shake the very foundations of art and thought. This was the Renaissance, a rebirth of classical learning that unleashed a torrent of creativity, and at its heart was a passionate rediscovery of the sacred geometry of the ancients. It was as if a long-forgotten language was being deciphered, and artists and architects suddenly found themselves with the keys to a new old way of seeing the world, one where mathematics and beauty were inseparable expressions of a divine order. This wasn't a dusty academic exercise. It was a revolution played out on canvases and in cathedrals, a fervent belief that by mastering the geometric rules of the universe, they could not only replicate the glory of Rome and Greece but even surpass it, creating works that captured the very essence of God's perfectly ordered creation. No single figure embodies this spirit of inquisitive fusion better than Leonardo da Vinci. A painter, inventor, scientist, and engineer, Leonardo was obsessed with understanding the underlying principles of nature, and he saw geometry as the fundamental alphabet of that universal language. His iconic drawing, The Vitruvian Man, is the ultimate symbol of this Renaissance ideal. It's far more than a beautifully proportioned figure. It is a profound geometric theorem in human form. Here, Leonardo brings to life the writings of the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius, perfectly inscribing a man within both a circle and a square. The navel is the center of the circle, representing the divine and the eternal, while the square, centered on the genitals, symbolizes the earthly and material world. The outstretched limbs touch the boundaries of both shapes, demonstrating that the human body is the literal microcosm, the perfect measure of all things, built by God according to the same harmonic proportions that govern the cosmos. This drawing was a declaration that to create great art, one must first understand the sacred mathematics of life itself. This geometric fervor swept through the studios of Europe. The German master Albrecht Dürer traveled to Italy to study perspective and proportion, later publishing detailed treatises like his 4 books on measurement, which provided practical, geometric methods for artists to achieve realism and beauty. He developed new drawing devices and grids to help artists accurately project 3-dimensional forms onto a 2-dimensional surface, effectively mathematizing the act of seeing. In their religious paintings, artists like Piero della Francesca and Sandro Botticelli began constructing their compositions with meticulous geometric underpinnings. The placement of figures, the folds of drapery, the architecture in the background, all were arranged according to divine ratios, creating a hidden armature of order that brought a new sense of harmony, balance, and spiritual depth to their work. They were painting their faith, using the very geometry they believed God used to build reality. Meanwhile, architects were undertaking physical feats that seemed to defy possibility, all through the application of rediscovered geometric principles. Filippo Brunelleschi, the brilliant Florentine architect, is a prime example. His crowning achievement, the immense dome of the Florence Cathedral, had stumped builders for decades. Its planned span was considered too wide to be built without traditional and ugly Gothic flying buttresses. But Brunelleschi, a dedicated student of Roman architecture and geometry, devised an ingenious solution. He designed a double-shelled dome with an inner and outer shell supporting each other, and he structured it using a herringbone pattern of bricks that channeled the weight and stress along specific, geometrically determined curves. He essentially built the dome without any supporting wooden centering, a staggering feat of engineering intuition. The result was not just a structural marvel, it was a perfectly proportioned, soaring symbol of Florentine pride and humanist triumph, a testament to the power of human reason guided by ancient geometric wisdom. This intellectual movement was formally canonized with the publication of one of the most influential books of the era, Luca Pacioli's Divina Proportion, in 1509. Pacioli, a Franciscan friar and mathematician, was a close friend of Leonardo da Vinci, who provided the book's exquisite illustrations of the Platonic solids. The book was entirely dedicated to the golden ratio, which Pacioli christened the divine proportion. He attributed to it a list of sublime qualities, arguing that it was a divine and singular number, a key to understanding everything from philosophy and theology to architecture and art. For Pacioli and his readers, this wasn't just a math textbook, it was a theological and artistic manifesto. It argued that by employing this God-given proportion, artists and architects could infuse their creations with a celestial harmony that would resonate with the human soul, lifting it toward a contemplation of the divine. This book became the essential guide, linking the workshops of artists directly to the lofty ideals of philosophers and the hard calculations of engineers, proving that in the Renaissance mind, there was no conflict between the chapel and the calculator. This grand revival did more than just produce beautiful objects. It fundamentally reshaped Western consciousness. The Renaissance fusion of rigorous science, sublime art, and deep spirituality through the common language of geometry laid the indispensable groundwork for everything that followed. It established the idea that the universe was knowable through mathematical law, paving the way for the scientific revolution of Galileo and Newton. It created an aesthetic standard based on harmonic proportion that would dominate Western art for centuries. Most importantly, it reinstated the human being as the measure of all things, capable of understanding the blueprints of creation and using them to build a better, more beautiful, and more enlightened world. This period stands as a powerful testament to the enduring power of ancient ideas, demonstrating that a blueprint drawn in the sands of Egypt or debated in the academies of Athens could, 1,000 years later, fuel an explosion of innovation that would forever change the face of human culture. Standing on the windswept Salisbury Plain in England, looking at the colossal ring of standing stones known as Stonehenge, it's impossible not to feel a deep sense of awe and mystery. This monument, built over thousands of years by Neolithic peoples, is one of the world's most powerful testaments to humanity's ancient and profound relationship with sacred geometry. Its iconic circular layout is not a random arrangement. It is a precise geometric and astronomical computer crafted from stone. The entire structure is meticulously aligned with the movements of the sun. At the summer solstice, the rising sun shines directly through the entrance and into the heart of the circle, illuminating the central altar stone. At the winter solstice, the sun sets perfectly between the uprights of the tallest trilithons, framing the dying light of the year in a dramatic celestial spectacle. This was far more than a calendar for agriculture. For the people who built it, this alignment was a sacred communion, a moment when the veil between the human world and the cosmic order became thin, a time for powerful rituals that connected the community to the cycles of life, death, and rebirth that govern their existence. But Stonehenge is not alone in its sophistication. Across the British Isles, other Neolithic monuments reveal a startlingly widespread and advanced understanding of geometric principles. Just a short distance away lies the even larger henge complex of Avebury, a massive circular bank and ditch enclosing a vast outer circle of stones, with two smaller inner circles at its center. The scale is breathtaking and the geometry is intentional. Meanwhile, in Scotland, the Callanish stones on the Isle of Lewis present a different but equally deliberate geometric pattern. Unlike the circular plans of Stonehenge and Avebury, Callanish forms a rough Celtic cross with a central stone circle and long avenues of standing stones radiating out to the cardinal directions. This cruciform shape is precisely aligned with the rising and setting of the moon during its major standstill, an event that occurs only every 18.6 years. The fact that these distant cultures, separated by miles and generations, were all employing complex geometry to track sophisticated astronomical cycles suggests a shared cultural emphasis, a common desire to encode cosmic order into the very landscape they inhabited. The construction of these sites themselves is a story of geometric ambition and breathtaking communal effort. The blue stones at Stonehenge, for instance, were quarried from mountains over 150 miles away in Wales. Transporting these multi-ton monoliths across such a vast distance, likely by a combination of sledges, rollers, and rafts, would have required an immense, coordinated social effort and a deep understanding of engineering and logistics. Then came the precise shaping and erection. The iconic trilithons, two vertical stones capped by a horizontal lintel, are a masterpiece of Neolithic engineering. The lintels are not simply placed on top, they are connected using sophisticated woodworking joints carved directly into the stone. The tenons on the top of the uprights fit perfectly into mortise holes carved into the bottom of the lintels. This technique, ensuring stability for millennia, demonstrates an intuitive grasp of weight, balance, and geometric form. This wasn't brute force, it was applied mathematics and physics on a grand scale, turning raw stone into a permanent, functioning observatory. What motivated this incredible expenditure of time and energy? The answer lies in the deep, intertwined spiritual and practical needs of Neolithic society. Geometry was the bridge between the earthly and the divine. These stone circles were likely places of ancestral veneration, where the spirits of the dead were believed to be closer to the living. The precise geometric layout may have been seen as a conduit for this spiritual energy, a way to harness the power of the cosmos for healing, divination, and communication with the other world. The act of building itself was probably a powerful ritual that reinforced social cohesion, uniting different clans and families in a common, sacred purpose that transcended individual needs. In a world utterly dependent on the seasons, the ability to accurately predict the solstices and equinoxes was not just practical science. It was a form of magic, a way to assert control over the chaotic forces of nature and ensure the community's survival. The geometry embedded in these stones was therefore a complete system, a tool for survival, a map of the heavens, a temple for the spirits, and a symbol of communal identity, all fused into a single, enduring testament to the human spirit's quest for order and meaning in a vast and mysterious universe. Of all the geometric symbols we've encountered on this journey, perhaps none is more instantly recognizable or more shrouded in mystery than the flower of life. Imagine a pattern so fundamental, so pure, that it seems to act as a kind of geometric seed from which all other forms can spring. This is precisely what the flower of life represents, a mesmerizing design of multiple evenly spaced, overlapping circles that spread outward to form a perfectly symmetrical, flower-like pattern. At its very core lies a simple cluster of 7 circles, known as the seed of life, which many ancient traditions saw as the blueprint for the 7 days of creation, the genesis of all matter and form. From this seed, the pattern expands, circle by circle, into the complex and beautiful matrix of the full flower, a symbol believed by countless cultures to contain the very archetypal patterns of existence itself, from the atomic to the cosmic. Its physical presence across the ancient world is both baffling and inspiring. One of its oldest known representations is carved into the granite walls of the Temple of Osiris at Abydos in Egypt, a pattern etched into the stone with such precision that it seems to defy the era's tools, leading to endless speculation about how it was created. Yet, thousands of miles away, the same exact pattern appears on ancient Chinese temple roofs, hidden within the intricate designs of the Forbidden City. It's found inlaid into the floors of medieval Italian churches, etched into mysterious golden artifacts from the distant past, and woven into the sacred art of traditions from Japan to Turkey. This is not a case of simple, similar spirals or triangles. This is the exact same complex geometric pattern appearing in cultures that, according to mainstream history, had no possible way of communicating with one another. This profound recurrence forces us to ask a monumental question. Were these cultures connected by some lost thread of trade or spiritual exchange that we have yet to uncover? Or does this pattern point to something even deeper, a shared, intuitive human understanding of a fundamental geometry that underpins reality itself? Many scholars and mystics believe the latter, arguing that the flower of life is less an invention and more a discovery, a fundamental truth observed in the natural world and subsequently encoded into sacred art. They see it as a visual representation of the genesis of all form. Within its intricate lattice of circles, one can literally derive every one of the 5 Platonic solids, the tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron shapes that Plato himself taught were the building blocks of the physical universe. It also contains the blueprint for Metatron's cube, a complex figure formed by connecting the centers of each circle, which is itself said to hold all of these Platonic solids within it. This isn't just symbolic, it's a practical geometric fact. The flower of life, therefore, was seen as a kind of divine schematic, a geometric cheat sheet that contained the instructions for constructing everything from a single atom to an entire galaxy. To meditate upon it, to draw it, or to incorporate it into a temple's design was to actively participate in the act of creation, to align one's consciousness with the fundamental frequency of the universe. This is why its purpose was so often contemplative and transformative. In many Eastern traditions, focusing on the flower of life was a powerful meditative practice. The endless, repetitive, and perfect symmetry of the pattern has a unique effect on the brain, helping to still the chaotic chatter of the mind and induce a state of deep, calm focus. It was believed that by gazing at this symbol, a person could access higher states of consciousness, tapping into the universal wisdom and creative energy it represents. It was used as a tool for healing, for manifesting intentions, and for understanding the interconnected nature of all life. The pattern itself, with every circle connected and dependent on the others, is a perfect metaphor for this unity, a reminder that we are all part of a single, woven tapestry of existence, that separation is merely an illusion, and that the same geometric laws that shape a crystal also shape our souls. This enduring mystery is why the flower of life continues to captivate modern researchers, physicists, and spiritual seekers alike. In the field of quantum physics, scientists are discovering that the behavior of energy and matter at the subatomic level often reflects geometric patterns, with some models even resembling the sacred geometries revered by the ancients. The study of cymatics, how sound frequencies affect matter, shows that sand or water on a vibrating plate will form intricate geometric patterns, including perfect circles and hexagons, suggesting that geometry is the literal language of vibration. This has led some to theorize that the flower of life might be a visual representation of the fundamental energy field that connects all things, a geometric model of the quantum vacuum or the fabric of spacetime itself. While these ideas venture into the realm of theory, they underscore a powerful and growing recognition that the ancient world's obsession with sacred geometry may have been based on a sophisticated, intuitive science that we are only now beginning to rediscover with our advanced instruments. The flower of life stands as a silent, elegant bridge across millennia, inviting us to consider that the language of the universe may not be one of words or equations alone, but of shape, proportion, and perfect overlapping circles. While Europe was building its stone cathedrals and the Maya were tracking celestial cycles, on the other side of the world, ancient China was developing a sophisticated system for harmonizing human life with the invisible currents of the natural world, a practice deeply rooted in the geometric ordering of space. This philosophy, known as feng shui, which translates to wind and water, is far more than an ancient art of placement. It is a complete cosmological system that uses geometric principles to align human dwellings with the beneficial flow of energy, or chi. The core belief is that the land itself is alive with energy patterns, and by understanding and working with the geometric shapes of the landscape, the orientation of structures, and the placement of objects within them, we can harness this energy to foster health, prosperity, and profound peace. It is the ultimate application of sacred geometry as a living, breathing tool for daily well-being, transforming a house into a sanctuary and a city into a model of cosmic order. At the heart of this practice lies one of the most powerful geometric tools, the Bagua map. Imagine an octagonal grid, a shape that itself bridges the symbolism of the square earth and the circle heaven. This is the Bagua, a geometric template that is superimposed over the floor plan of any space, from a single room to an entire property. Each of the 8 sides and the central core corresponds to a specific aspect of life, such as career, relationships, knowledge, family, and wealth, and is associated with a color, element, and celestial direction. A practitioner of feng shui uses this octagonal map to diagnose and enhance the energy of a space. For instance, the wealth area located in the southeast might be activated by introducing the geometric shape of its associated element, wood, perhaps with a rectangular wooden table or vibrant, upward-growing plants. The Bagua is not a superstition. It is a precise geometric guide for intentional living, a method for ensuring that the architecture of our lives supports our deepest aspirations by aligning it with the fundamental principles of the universe. This drive for perfect balance finds its purest geometric expression in the iconic yin-yang symbol, known as the Taijutsu. At first glance, it appears simple, a circle divided by a sinuous line into a black and a white teardrop shape, each containing a dot of its opposite. But this simplicity is deceptive. It is a masterpiece of sacred geometry that encapsulates the entire Chinese cosmological view. The circle represents the whole, the undivided Tao from which all things emerge. The S-curve that divides it is a geometric representation of dynamic, flowing change, not a static, harsh line. It shows that nothing is purely one thing. Within yang light, active, masculine, there is always a seed of yin dark, receptive, feminine, and vice versa. The symbol is a perfect balance of equal area and proportion, teaching that harmony is not a static state but a continuous, graceful dance between opposing forces. It is a geometric mantra for a balanced life, reminding us that true well-being comes from embracing and integrating all aspects of existence. This philosophical framework was applied on a breathtaking scale in the design of ancient China's greatest cities and temples. The capital cities of ancient dynasties like Chang'an and Beijing were meticulously planned as perfect squares oriented to the cardinal directions, with massive walls and gates marking the 4 points of the compass. This was not merely for defense, it was a geometric act of creating a terrestrial mirror of the celestial order. The emperor's palace was always situated at the north center of the city, directly aligned with the North Star, which was considered the unmoving pivot of the heavens around which all other stars revolved. This sacred alignment geometrically cemented the emperor's role as the Son of Heaven, the central axis linking the human world with the divine cosmic realm. His throne would be placed along this north-south axis, ensuring he literally sat at the center of the universe, governing in accordance with the mandate of heaven. Temple and tomb architecture followed similarly precise geometric rules. The Temple of Heaven in Beijing is a stunning example. The complex is a geometric dialogue between square and circular forms. The main altar, the circular mound altar, is a series of pristine white marble circular terraces. The number of balustrades and steps on each tier is a multiple of 9, the number associated with the emperor and heaven. This circular shape represents the heavenly realm. Conversely, the nearby imperial vault of heaven is surrounded by a perfectly square wall. This interplay of the circle of heaven and the square of earth creates a powerful geometric field, a place designed to facilitate the emperor's annual prayers for a good harvest, where his words were believed to travel directly along these sacred lines up to the heavens. This holistic system demonstrates that for the ancient Chinese, sacred geometry was never an abstract concept to be studied in isolation. It was a practical, integrated science for living. The orientation of a home, the shape of a garden pond, the placement of a bed, all were guided by geometric principles aimed at maximizing the smooth flow of chi. A winding path leading to a front door, for example, was preferred over a straight one, as it allowed beneficial energy to meander and accumulate rather than rush in and out in a straight, draining line. This attention to the geometry of daily life reflects a profound understanding that our surroundings directly influence our inner state. By shaping our environment with intention and according to these ancient geometric principles, we aren't just decorating a space. We are actively participating in the creation of harmony, weaving our own lives into the great, beautiful, and orderly tapestry of the cosmos. This same profound intuition for harmonizing human life with the cosmos found its most systematic and mathematically rigorous expression in the ancient Indian tradition of Vastu Shastra. The very name reveals its essence, Vastu meaning the site or building, and Shastra meaning science or knowledge. But this was no ordinary architectural manual. It was a sacred science, a comprehensive system that viewed the act of building as a spiritual act of co-creation with the universe itself. It operated on a fundamental belief that the land upon which we build is a living entity, pulsating with subtle energies, and that by applying precise geometric and astronomical principles, we could design structures that resonated with these energies, transforming a mere house into a sanctuary that actively supports the health, prosperity, and spiritual growth of its inhabitants. At the absolute core of this system lies the Vastu Purusha Mandala, a metaphysical and geometric blueprint of staggering symbolic depth. Imagine a square grid, a perfect geometric form representing the earth and the realm of order. Now imagine a cosmic being, the Vastu Purusha, pinned face down to this grid by a pantheon of 45 different deities. This is not a myth of subjugation, but one of sacred cooperation. Each deity presides over a specific square or part of the grid, governing a particular aspect of life, from health and wealth to knowledge and relationships. The architect's sacred duty was to design the building in perfect alignment with this mandala. The central area, the Brahmasthana, was always left open as a courtyard or a sacred central point, representing the navel of the Purusha and the still, creative center of the universe. The placement of every single element, the main door, the kitchen, the bedroom, the treasury, was then determined by its corresponding deity on the grid. To build according to this geometric template was to literally invite the benevolent energies of the cosmos into the structure, ensuring that every activity within the home occurred in a zone that was spiritually and energetically attuned for its purpose. This theoretical framework was translated into breathtaking physical reality in the construction of India's magnificent temples, and few places exemplify this better than the Khajuraho temple complex. These world-renowned structures are not just famous for their intricate sculptures, they are masterclasses in Vastu geometry. Each temple is meticulously designed as a symbolic journey from the material world to the spiritual realm, a progression mirrored in its geometric plan. The layout is typically based on a perfect square, the most stable and earthly of forms, representing the mortal plane. As you move inward and upward toward the innermost sanctum, or garbhagriha, the geometry shifts. This sanctum housing the deity is often a smaller, darkened square, but the tower above it, the shikara, explodes upward in a soaring, curvilinear form. This is not a random shape. It is a precise geometric representation of Mount Meru, the mythical axis mundi that connects heaven and earth. The entire structure, from its square base to its circular peak ornaments, is a three-dimensional mandala, a geometric prayer in stone designed to guide the devotee's consciousness from the earthly to the divine. The precision required to achieve this sacred harmony was immense, and it was codified in ancient texts like the Mesoamerica and the Manasara. These were not vague spiritual guides. They were detailed technical manuals that provided architects or aesthepotes with exact geometric formulas and proportional systems. They specified everything from the ideal proportions of a room, calculated based on the owner's height, to the precise angles for doorways and windows to optimize the flow of light and air. The aesthepote was both a master geometer and a spiritual initiate, wielding his tools, the compass for the circle of the heavens and the square for the earth, to mediate between the two realms. His work integrated advanced mathematics and astronomy. Temples were frequently aligned with specific constellations or designed so that the sun's rays would illuminate the inner sanctum only on the equinoxes, creating a moment of divine conjunction between the celestial and the earthly. This was a holistic science where spirituality was expressed through mathematical exactitude, and beauty was the inevitable byproduct of perfect proportion. This ancient wisdom is far from a relic of the past. The enduring relevance of Vastu Shastra is powerfully evident in modern India, where its principles continue to influence contemporary architecture. It is not uncommon for new homes, corporate offices, and even entire housing developments to be designed with Vastu compliance in mind. While some modern applications may simplify the complex original system, the core intention remains to create spaces that feel inherently harmonious and supportive. This persistence speaks to a deep, intuitive human understanding that our surroundings profoundly affect us. The ancient Indians codified this understanding into a sophisticated sacred science, teaching us that geometry is not just about lines and angles. It is the fundamental language of space, a tool we can use to consciously shape our environment into a reflection of cosmic order, and in doing so, build a foundation for a life of greater balance, well-being, and connection. Yet to truly grasp the genius of these ancient sky watchers, we must look beyond the grand monuments to the intricate systems they engineered. The Maya, for instance, developed a calendar of staggering complexity that stands as a testament to their geometric view of time itself. They didn't have just one calendar, they operated with three interlocking systems that functioned like cosmic gears. The Tzolk'in was their 260-day sacred calendar, a cycle woven from the numbers 13 and 20. The Hob was a 365-day solar calendar, closely tracking the agricultural year. But the true marvel was the calendar round, a grand cycle formed by the synchronization of the Tzolk'in and the Hob, which would only realign every 52 years. This period was so significant it marked a time of immense ceremony and renewal, as the Maya believed the world was vulnerable to being destroyed and remade at the end of each 52-year cycle. Their understanding, however, stretched even further into deep time with the long count calendar, capable of calculating dates millions of years in the past or future, all based on a Vajrasimul or base 20 numerical system. This wasn't just math for the sake of math. It was a profound expression of their belief that time itself was a sacred, geometric spiral, with great cycles of creation and destruction repeating according to a divine, knowable pattern. This celestial choreography reached its zenith in their ability to predict cosmic events with breathtaking precision, most notably eclipses. The Maya tracked the cycles of the sun, moon, and the planet Venus with an accuracy that rivals our modern computations. Their Dresden Codex contains detailed tables predicting the movements of Venus over a span of 384 years. They understood that after 263 cycles of the Tzolk'in calendar, a pattern of solar and lunar eclipses would repeat. This knowledge was power, not just political power, but spiritual power. By predicting an eclipse, the priesthood could demonstrate its divine connection, its ability to commune with the gods who controlled these terrifying celestial omens. An eclipse was not a random event. It was a moment when the geometric clockwork of the cosmos revealed a profound and often frightening alignment. Their ability to forecast it showed they understood the rules of the celestial game, allowing them to prepare the necessary rituals to ensure the sun or moon would return and the world would not be plunged into permanent darkness. Half a world away, the Babylonians were engaged in a similarly sophisticated endeavor, but with a distinctly different mathematical flavor. While the Maya used a base 20 system, the Babylonians gave us the base 60 system, which is why we still divide an hour into 60 minutes and a circle into 360 degrees. Their astronomers, meticulously recording observations on clay tablets for centuries, discovered the Saros cycle, a period of approximately 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours after which the sun, earth, and moon returned to nearly the same relative geometry, causing a similar pattern of eclipses to repeat. This geometric model of celestial periods allowed them to make remarkably accurate predictions. Their work was less about monumental architecture and more about meticulous data collection and pattern recognition. Yet it was driven by the same core belief that the heavens operated according to a divine, mathematical order that, if decoded, would reveal the will of the gods. Their astronomical diaries, which noted celestial events alongside earthly occurrences like commodity prices and weather, show they deeply believed in astrology, that the geometric arrangements of the planets directly influenced events on Earth. This deep interplay between geometry and astronomy reveals a universal truth about these ancient civilizations. Their understanding of the cosmos was the ultimate fusion of science and spirituality. The precise alignment of a pyramid's passageway to a star, the ability to predict an eclipse decades in advance, the complex interweaving of multiple calendar cycles, these were not separate academic disciplines. They were all part of a holistic world, where the earthly and the celestial were mirrors of one another, both governed by the same sacred geometric principles. To know the sky was to know the mind of the gods, and to build in alignment with the sky was to participate in the divine order. This sacred science provided the essential framework for every aspect of society. It told farmers when to plant and harvest, it told priests when to conduct the most powerful rituals, and it told kings when to wage war or ascend to the throne. It was the ultimate clock and compass for human civilization, a way to navigate not just the physical world, but the metaphysical one as well, ensuring that human life remained in harmonious sync with the eternal, geometric dance of the cosmos. Beyond the stones and temples, this sacred language of form found another enduring vessel, the written word itself. Ancient scribes and priests, from the mystics of the Hebrew Kabbalah to the rishis who composed the Hindu Vedas, understood that some truths were too profound for plain description. For these esoteric concepts, they turned to geometry, encoding layers of cosmic knowledge into intricate symbols and diagrams that served as both spiritual maps and powerful tools for inner transformation. This wasn't about secrecy for its own sake. It was about preserving a multidimensional wisdom in a form that could be contemplated, unlocked, and experienced, rather than just intellectually understood. These geometric codes, woven into the very fabric of sacred texts, became a universal syntax for the ineffable, a way to convey the architecture of the divine using the timeless vocabulary of shape and proportion. One of the most sophisticated examples of this is the Kabbalistic tree of life, or Etz Chaim. At first glance, it appears as a diagram of 10 circles called Sephiroth, arranged in 3 columns and connected by 22 pathways. But this is far more than a simple chart. It is a dynamic geometric model of the entire cosmos and the human soul's journey through it. Each sephira represents a different divine emanation or aspect of creation, from Keter, the crown of pure divine will, to Malkuth, the kingdom of the physical world we inhabit. The pathways between them correspond to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet and the major arcana of the tarot, creating a complex system of symbolic correspondences. A Kabbalist doesn't just study the tree, they meditate upon its geometry, using it as a mandala to navigate the layers of their own consciousness and understand the process of creation itself, from the infinite, formless divine down to the world of matter. It is a complete metaphysical system expressed not in paragraphs, but in points and lines, a spiritual GPS for ascending from the earthly to the heavenly. In a similar vein, the tantric traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism developed their own profound geometric tools known as Yantras. A yantra is a concentrated geometric emblem of divine energy, a kind of spiritual battery composed of interlocking triangles, circles, lotus petals, and squares, all centered on a single, potent point known as the bindu. The most famous of these is the Sri Yantra, a breathtaking configuration of 9 interlocking triangles that create 43 smaller triangles, all enclosed within concentric circles. This isn't art to be admired, it is a machine for meditation. The practitioner focuses their gaze and their mind on the bindu, then slowly traces the intricate pathways of the geometry outward before journeying back inward. This intense visual and mental concentration stills the restless mind and is believed to actually generate the spiritual energy of the deity it represents. The yantra's precise geometry acts as a focal point for harnessing cosmic forces, making the abstract tangible and bringing the infinite into a form the human mind can engage with and ultimately transcend. The act of creating these textual and symbolic geometries was itself a sacred ritual. Scribes who illuminated manuscripts, whether Celtic Gospels or Islamic Qurans, often worked within strict geometric constraints. The dimensions of the page, the margins, the ornate initials, all were frequently determined by harmonic proportions like the golden ratio. In Celtic Book of Kells, the famous Cairo page is a stunning labyrinth of geometric knots and spirals that both decorate and encode deeper meanings about infinity and interconnection. These were not mere decorations, they were visual prayers. The time-consuming, meticulous process of creating these perfect forms was a meditative act for the scribe, a way of imbuing the holy words with an additional layer of sacred order and beauty. The geometric patterns served a practical purpose as well, acting as powerful mnemonic devices. The complex, interwoven designs helped to anchor the teachings in the memory of the initiate, providing a visual structure to recall vast amounts of philosophical or cosmological information long before the age of printing. To unravel these geometric codes is to gain a privileged glimpse into the ancient mind. It reveals a mode of thinking that was holistic, where number, shape, sound, and spirit were not separate disciplines but interconnected expressions of a single, unified reality. The geometry in these texts was their way of creating a bridge between the rational left brain and the intuitive right brain, offering a complete experience of wisdom that engaged the entire being. It shows us that for our ancestors, understanding the universe wasn't just about accumulating facts. It was about perceiving patterns, relationships, and the underlying symmetry that binds all things together. They used this language of circles, triangles, and spirals to speak the unspeakable, to map the unmappable, and to preserve for future generations not just ideas, but a direct experience of the profound harmonic order that they believed was the true foundation of all existence. While the spiritual and cosmic dimensions of sacred geometry are profoundly compelling, this ancient wisdom was also intensely practical, providing the indispensable mathematical backbone for some of history's most staggering engineering achievements. These were not just monuments to the gods, they were masterclasses in applied physics, where a deep understanding of geometric principles allowed ancient builders to defy gravity, conquer distance, and create structures of such durability that they continue to stand millennia later. This is where the sacred truly met the mundane, where the abstract language of circles and triangles was translated into aqueducts that sustained entire cities and walls that could withstand devastating earthquakes. Consider the breathtaking ambition of the Roman aqueducts. These were not simple water channels, they were precision-engineered gravity-fed systems that stretched for dozens of miles across treacherous terrain. The genius of their design lay in a geometric constant, a meticulously calculated, shallow slope. For the aqueduct to function, the water needed a steady, unbroken descent from its mountain source to the city. Maintaining this exact gradient over such vast distances required an astonishingly sophisticated grasp of surveying and geometry. Engineers used a tool called a groma to sight straight lines and a chorobates, a precise leveling instrument, to ensure the gradient was perfect. The iconic arched bridges that carried these waterways across valleys are themselves geometric marvels. The repeating semicircular arch is a shape perfectly engineered to distribute immense weight down through its piers into the ground, a principle the Romans mastered through geometric repetition and scale. This was mathematics in service of human survival, a geometric lifeline that brought fresh water to millions and became the very circulatory system of the Roman Empire. On another continent, the Inca civilization achieved a similarly stunning fusion of geometry and engineering, but with a completely different approach. Their structures, like the fortress of Sacsayhuamán overlooking Cusco, are famous for their mind-boggling masonry. Massive, irregularly shaped stones, some weighing over 100 tons, are fitted together so perfectly that not even a razor blade can slide between them. This technique, known as ashlar masonry, seems almost supernatural, but it was grounded in a relentless, practical geometric process. Stonemasons would painstakingly shape each block, using harder stones as tools to grind and abrade the surfaces. They employed a method called pillow facing, where a stone would be carved with a slight convex bulge. This bulge would then be meticulously ground down against the concave depression of the adjacent stone already in place. This iterative, three-dimensional puzzle solving was a physical manifestation of geometric problem solving, creating joints so tight and interlocking that the walls became seismically active. During an earthquake, the stones in an Inca wall would actually dance and settle back into place, while a rigid, mortared wall would simply collapse. Their geometry wasn't just about creating static beauty, it was about designing for resilience, using form and friction to create structures that could literally move with the earth. This sophisticated application of geometric principles often predated the formal theorems that would later bear their name. The most famous example is hidden within the Great Pyramid of Giza. The cross-section of the pyramid reveals a triangle whose proportions incorporate both the golden ratio and, even more strikingly, the Pythagorean theorem. The ratio of the pyramid's slant height to half its base length is remarkably close to the golden ratio, approximately 1.618. Furthermore, the dimensions of the king's chamber itself form a 2-by-1 rectangle, and the diagonal of this chamber's end wall is a 3-unit length. This creates a perfect 3-4-5 Pythagorean triple, a right-angled triangle whose properties were formally documented by the Greeks over 2,000 years later. The Egyptians may not have called it a theorem, but they clearly understood the practical relationship between these lengths. This knowledge was likely born from generations of empirical observation and hands-on experience, a working knowledge of sacred proportions that enabled them to achieve near-perfect symmetry and alignment on a colossal scale. What unites these diverse achievements from Rome, the Andes, and Egypt is a powerful synthesis of vision and pragmatism. The sacred geometry provided the inspirational blueprint, the cosmic justification for why a structure should take a specific, harmonious form. But the engineering was the gritty, practical reality of how to make it stand. This required an intimate understanding of materials, of stress and load, of compression and tension. It demanded innovative problem-solving, like the Roman development of hydraulic cement that could set underwater, or the Inca transportation of massive stones using log rollers and earthen ramps. The durability of these structures is the ultimate testament to their success. They attest to the profound effectiveness of applying geometric principles to overcome the limitations of available tools and materials. To study ancient engineering is not just to admire old ruins, it is to uncover a vast legacy of innovation, a testament to the human mind's ability to use the timeless language of geometry to shape the physical world, leaving behind a built environment that was both spiritually resonant and built to last forever. Yet as the grand public works of the Renaissance rose into the sky, a parallel, more clandestine stream of this ancient geometric knowledge continued to flow underground, preserved and practiced not in universities or public squares, but in the meeting halls of secret societies. Groups like the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians became the unexpected guardians of this sacred wisdom during an age of increasing scientific materialism, viewing geometry not as a mere branch of mathematics, but as the key to unlocking both moral virtue and cosmic truth. For them, the tools of the architect were never just physical instruments, they were profound spiritual symbols. The compass, which draws the perfect circle of the heavens, and the square, which defines the right angles of the earthly realm, were central to their rituals and teachings. These instruments represented the ideal balance every initiate was to strive for: the harmonious integration of the spiritual and the material, the divine inspiration of the circle, and the practical, ethical conduct of the square. To be a builder in this context was to be a moral architect of one's own soul, using the timeless principles of geometry as a guide for personal improvement and, by extension, the betterment of all society. This was not an invention but a rediscovery, a conscious effort to reach back through time and reconnect with a perceived golden age of wisdom. The Freemasons, emerging from the guilds of actual stonemasons who built the great cathedrals, claimed a lineage stretching back to the builders of Solomon's temple. They believed the geometric secrets they guarded were the same ones known to the ancient Egyptian priests and the Greek mystics. The Rosicrucians, with their manifestos published in the early 17th century, spoke of an invisible college of enlightened beings who possessed this ancient knowledge, which combined alchemy, Kabbalah, and sacred geometry into a unified system for spiritual transformation. These societies saw themselves as the custodians of a perennial philosophy, a secret thread of wisdom that had been passed down through the ages, often under threat of persecution because it was deemed too powerful for the uninitiated. The secretive, symbolic nature of their rituals was a method of protection, ensuring that this knowledge would only be revealed to those who were prepared to understand its profound implications and use it responsibly. The most visible and enduring testament to their influence is etched into the very landscape of the modern world, particularly in the architecture of government and civic power. When you look at the design of Washington, D.C., you are essentially looking at a massive Freemasonic diagram laid out in stone and street. Pierre L'Enfant's original plan, later refined by Andrew Ellicott and Benjamin Banneker, is a complex web of geometric symbolism. The city is filled with triangles, circles, and pentagrams formed by the intersection of its diagonal avenues with the grid streets. The most famous of these is the pentagram whose points are formed by the White House, the Jefferson Memorial, the Washington Monument, the Capitol Building, and the Lincoln Memorial. The Capitol Building itself is overflowing with geometric symbolism from its rotunda, a representation of the celestial dome, to the compass and square patterns embedded in its floor tiles and ironwork. This was not whimsical decoration. It was a deliberate attempt to create a new Rome, a new Athens, a capital city whose very geometry would channel the ideals of reason, order, and enlightened governance, creating a physical vessel for a new kind of society founded on ancient principles. This architectural language extends far beyond America. The streets of Paris, remodeled by Baron Haussmann in the 19th century, feature prominent landmarks like the Place de l'Étoile, with its 12 radiating avenues, a classic solar symbol. The Great Seal of the United States, found on the $1 bill, is a masterclass in esoteric geometry, featuring a pyramid with a detached capstone containing the all-seeing eye of divine providence, surrounded by Latin phrases about a new secular order. Even the very act of a president being inaugurated on a particular day or swearing an oath on a specific book can trace its symbolic roots back to these traditions that sought to align human law with perceived cosmic law. The belief was that by embedding these sacred geometric patterns into the foundations of government, the nation itself would be more stable, more just, and more in harmony with the natural order of the universe. It was the ultimate application of sacred geometry on a societal scale, an attempt to build not just a temple, but an entire civilization according to a divine blueprint. The secretive transmission of this knowledge across centuries, often through complex initiation rites and symbolic degrees, highlights the immense value these societies placed upon it. This was not knowledge to be published in a textbook. It was wisdom to be earned through personal development and solemn commitment. The rituals were designed as transformative experiences, using geometric symbols as portals to deeper understanding. A candidate might be blindfolded and led on a winding path before being brought to the center of a room, symbolically moving from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge found at the geometric center of things. This process emphasized that true understanding comes from an inward journey, not just an accumulation of facts. The perceived power of this geometric knowledge was such that it was believed to confer not only spiritual insight but also real influence over the material world, which is why it was so closely guarded. To explore these esoteric traditions is to pull back a curtain on a hidden history of ideas, to see how the sacred geometry of the ancients was carefully preserved, adapted, and ultimately embedded into the foundations of the modern world, influencing everything from our symbols of state to our deepest ideals about the relationship between a well-ordered soul and a well-ordered society. Yet this ancient wisdom is far from being a relic confined to history books. It is experiencing a vibrant and powerful renaissance, quietly shaping the very cutting edge of modern design, science, and our daily well-being. The timeless principles of sacred geometry have found a new home in the 21st century, not as esoteric symbols, but as practical tools for creating a more harmonious, sustainable, and meaningful world. Architects are once again turning to these ancient ratios, but now with a new purpose. In the field of sustainable design, the golden ratio and other harmonic proportions are being used to create buildings that are not only visually pleasing but also profoundly energy efficient. The intuitive sense of balance these forms create can lead to spaces that feel more comfortable, require less artificial lighting and climate control, and even improve the well-being of their occupants. This isn't about mere decoration. It's a movement known as biophilic design, which seeks to reconnect humans with the natural patterns we are instinctively drawn to. Buildings are being designed with spiraling atriums that mimic the Fibonacci sequence, facades patterned after fractal branching, and floor plans based on the seed of life to promote better airflow and natural light penetration. This modern application transforms sacred geometry from a spiritual idea into a pragmatic science for building a healthier, more sustainable future, proving that these patterns are as much about function as they are about form. This profound influence extends deep into the realm of scientific inquiry, where the language of geometry is providing unprecedented insights into the very fabric of reality. The development of fractal geometry, largely pioneered by Benoit Mandelbrot, revealed that the irregular shapes of nature, cloud formations, mountain ranges, river deltas, and even the branching of our own lungs and circulatory systems are not random chaos. They are built on a principle of self-similarity, where the same geometric pattern repeats itself at different scales. This was a monumental discovery that echoed the ancient belief in an underlying geometric order to all creation. Suddenly, scientists had a mathematical tool to model the complex, irregular world around them with stunning accuracy. Furthermore, the frontiers of quantum physics and crystallography are now delving into realms that sound remarkably like the theories of Plato and the Pythagoreans. In crystallography, scientists study the geometric lattice structures that form the foundation of all solid matter, from snowflakes to diamonds. In quantum physics, researchers are developing models like string theory, which proposes that the fundamental building blocks of the universe are tiny, vibrating strings whose resonant patterns could give rise to all the particles and forces we observe. Some models even suggest these strings vibrate in higher dimensional geometric shapes, a concept that hauntingly mirrors Plato's idea of the universe being constructed from the 5 perfect Platonic solids. While these are still theoretical, the parallel is striking. Our most advanced science is increasingly pointing toward a universe built not on random particles, but on geometric patterns of energy and vibration. This geometric awakening is also powerfully transforming the arts and media, where creators are using these ancient patterns to communicate depth, meaning, and a sense of the mystical directly to our subconscious. Filmmakers like Christopher Nolan consciously incorporate sacred geometry into their storytelling. In the mind-bending film Inception, the endless staircase that the characters navigate is a physical representation of a Penrose triangle, an impossible geometric object that perfectly visualizes the film's themes of recursive reality and infinite layers of the subconscious. Video game designers build entire virtual worlds using procedural generation based on fractal algorithms, creating landscapes of infinite complexity and beauty that feel both alien and strangely familiar. Graphic designers and animators use the golden spiral to compose frames that guide the viewer's eye, and create a subliminal sense of balance and narrative flow. Even in the music industry, artists and producers sometimes use binaural beats and sound frequencies based on sacred ratios to create tracks that are intended to induce specific states of relaxation or focus in the listener. This modern application shows that sacred geometry is no longer niche. It has become a sophisticated visual and auditory language in popular culture, used to evoke wonder and convey complex ideas that transcend literal explanation. Perhaps one of the most personal and growing applications is in the field of holistic wellness and meditation. The ancient practice of using geometric forms as focal points for contemplation has surged in popularity. People around the world now use mandala coloring books as a form of active meditation, the repetitive, precise patterns helping to calm an anxious mind and promote a state of flow. Therapists might use Sri Yantra diagrams or images of the flower of life to help clients center themselves during sessions. In the realm of energy healing, practices like sacred geometry crystal grids have become common. Practitioners place specific crystals on geometric points of a larger pattern, often based on the seed of life or Metatron's cube, with the intention of amplifying healing energy, setting intentions, or harmonizing the energy of a space. While the mechanisms are debated, the psychological effect is powerful and real. The act of intentionally arranging a beautiful, symmetrical pattern engages the mind in a calming, creative process, reducing stress and fostering a sense of personal agency and connection. This modern revival demonstrates that in our fast-paced, often chaotic digital age, there is a deep and growing hunger for the order, balance, and contemplative silence that these ancient geometric patterns provide, offering a tangible anchor to a more centered and mindful way of living. Now, as we stand in awe of these ancient achievements, it's crucial to navigate the line between wonder and wild speculation. The field of sacred geometry, perhaps because it deals with such profound and beautiful mysteries, has also become a breeding ground for myths and sensational claims that can actually diminish the real marvel of what our ancestors accomplished. One of the most persistent and popular ideas is that these precise geometric and astronomical feats were simply too advanced for ancient humans, and therefore must be the work of extraterrestrials or a lost, hyper-advanced civilization like Atlantis. This notion, while captivating for science fiction, fundamentally disrespects the ingenuity of the cultures we've been exploring. It suggests that the Egyptians, the Maya, the Mesopotamians, and the countless other brilliant societies around the globe were incapable of such genius on their own, which is a disservice to their incredible intellectual legacy. When we actually examine the evidence, a far more impressive story emerges, one of meticulous human effort, patient observation, and clever innovation. Take the astronomical alignments of structures like Stonehenge or the pyramids. The idea of tracking the sun's movement over a year doesn't require advanced technology. It requires consistent, careful observation over generations. A simple stick placed upright in the ground, known as a gnomon, can cast a shadow that marks the sun's path. By tracking the extreme points of this shadow at sunrise and sunset over many years, ancient astronomers could pinpoint the solstices with remarkable accuracy. This isn't magic, it's diligent, applied science. The construction of these massive monuments is similarly explainable through human ingenuity rather than otherworldly intervention. We have archaeological evidence of the quarries where stones were cut, the ramps and sledges used to transport them, and the worker villages that supported these colossal projects. The Great Pyramid was built over decades by a highly organized workforce of skilled laborers, not by slaves or aliens. The geometric precision they achieved came from a deep, practical understanding of mathematics and a painstaking process of trial and error, refined over centuries of architectural tradition. Another common myth involves attributing mystical powers to specific numbers or ratios, often by forcing them onto ancient structures where they may not have been intentionally used. The golden ratio, for instance, is a fascinating mathematical constant, but not every ancient building that appears close to this proportion was consciously designed with it in mind. Our modern fascination can sometimes lead to number fudging, where measurements are selectively interpreted or slightly adjusted to fit the desired ratio. The Parthenon is a classic example often cited, but many scholars point out that its proportions are more complex and varied, responding to optical illusions and aesthetic choices that go beyond a single, universal formula. The real story is often more nuanced and culturally specific. The Maya valued the numbers 13 and 20 for their cosmological significance tied to their calendars, not because they were universally sacred. By imposing our own modern mathematical obsessions onto their work, we risk missing the unique cultural and spiritual reasons that actually guided their designs. This isn't to drain the wonder from these places, quite the opposite. By clearing away the sensationalism, we can appreciate the true human-scale wonder of it all. The real magic lies in understanding that a group of Neolithic farmers, using simple tools and their own collective muscle, could haul massive stones across the countryside and arrange them into a perfect celestial calendar. The real miracle is that Egyptian priests, without telescopes or calculators, could map the stars and encode that knowledge into stone with such breathtaking precision. This truth is far more inspiring than any fiction about ancient astronauts. It celebrates the boundless potential of the human mind, our innate drive to find patterns and meaning in the world around us, and our ability to collaborate on projects that transcend individual lifetimes. It connects us to our ancestors not as passive recipients of alien knowledge, but as active, brilliant participants in the grand, ongoing human quest for understanding. By honoring their achievements within their proper historical and cultural context, we don't diminish them, we elevate them, and in doing so, we honor our own shared human capacity for genius, perseverance, and awe. But why do these shapes hold such a timeless and universal sway over us? The answer may be woven into the very fabric of our own neurology. Cutting-edge research in neuroscience and environmental psychology is beginning to reveal that our attraction to these geometric patterns isn't just a cultural preference, it's a biological hardwiring. Our brains seem to be inherently tuned to find comfort and pleasure in specific types of visual order. Take fractals, for instance. These are infinitely complex patterns that are self-similar across different scales, meaning the same basic shape repeats whether you're looking at the whole structure or zooming in on a tiny part. We see them everywhere in nature, in the branching of trees, the intricate veins of a leaf, the winding path of a river delta, and even in the structure of our own lungs. Studies have shown that when people are shown images of mid-complexity fractals like those found in cloud formations or rolling hills, their brains exhibit a specific response. There's a measurable reduction in psychological stress, often accompanied by a change in heart rate and a heightened state of relaxed focus. It's as if our visual cortex, the part of the brain that processes what we see, can process these natural, repetitive patterns with remarkable efficiency, putting our minds into a state of calm alertness without any conscious effort on our part. This innate comfort with nature's geometry provides a powerful lens through which to re-examine the choices of ancient builders. When we walk into a Gothic cathedral and look up at the intricate, repeating patterns of the vaulted ceilings, or when we stand before an Islamic mosaic with its endless tessellations, our brains aren't just seeing man-made art. They are responding to a visual language that mirrors the natural world. The repeating arches, the symmetrical stained glass windows, the fractal-like complexity of a rose window, these aren't arbitrary. They are carefully designed to trigger that same neurological response of reduced stress and enhanced cognitive focus. These sacred spaces were engineered to be environments of contemplation, and we now have science suggesting that their power isn't merely symbolic. The very geometry of the space works on a subconscious level to quiet the mental chatter, lower cortisol levels, and prepare the mind for deeper reflection, prayer, or meditation. The awe we feel in these places is not just spiritual, it's physiological. The architects, though they didn't have fMRI machines, intuitively understood that these patterns induced a state of well-being and connection, making them the perfect vessel for transcendent experience. This deep-seated preference helps to explain the truly universal appeal of these geometric principles across every culture and continent. From the mandalas of Tibet to the dreamtime symbols of Aboriginal Australians, from the intricate beadwork of Native American tribes to the geometric foundations of African textiles, we see the same shapes emerging independently. A spiral, a circle, a repeating triangle, these forms are a constant. This can't be explained by cultural diffusion or shared knowledge. Instead, it points to a shared human consciousness, a common neurological bedrock upon which different cultures built their unique artistic and spiritual expressions. We are all, regardless of our background, drawn to a certain level of ordered complexity. Too much simplicity is boring and fails to engage our brain's pattern recognition systems. Too much chaos is stressful and overwhelming, forcing our brains to work overtime to find meaning. Sacred geometry consistently strikes the perfect balance between order and complexity, creating a visual experience that is both engaging and calming, familiar and fascinating. It taps into our innate desire for balance, offering a visual representation of harmony that our minds and bodies find deeply satisfying. Understanding this psychological dimension transforms sacred geometry from an ancient historical curiosity into a profoundly relevant tool for modern well-being. The same principles that guided the construction of the Parthenon can now be applied to the design of our homes, our workplaces, and our public spaces. This field, known as neuroarchitecture, is actively researching how design elements like symmetry, proportion, and natural light affect our mental state. A room designed with clear, harmonious proportions and incorporating natural materials with fractal patterns can reduce anxiety and improve focus. Hospitals are using these principles to design recovery rooms that help lower patient stress and promote healing. Schools are experimenting with classroom layouts and visual elements to enhance learning and concentration. We can harness this knowledge on a personal level too. Something as simple as arranging a room with balance in mind, hanging art that features natural, repetitive patterns, or even spending time in nature itself can actively help to regulate our nervous system. This bridges the gap between the ancient and the contemporary, showing that our ancestors weren't just building for the gods, they were building for the human brain. Their legacy is a blueprint not only for sacred spaces but for creating environments that support our mental health, foster creativity, and nurture a sense of peace in an often chaotic world, proving that the most powerful geometry is ultimately the one that helps us feel more human. What makes this global phenomenon so extraordinary is the sheer impossibility of contact between many of these cultures. The architects of the Egyptian pyramids and the Mesopotamian ziggurats were separated by vast deserts. The builders of Stonehenge in England and the Sun Pyramid in Teotihuacan were divided by an entire ocean. There is no historical evidence of a traveling geometer priest carrying blueprints from Giza to Guatemala. This forces us to consider a far more fascinating possibility. that this geometric understanding emerged independently, a spontaneous flowering of the same profound realization in isolated pockets of humanity. It suggests that when human consciousness turns its gaze toward the heavens, the earth, and the intricate patterns of the natural world, it arrives at the same fundamental conclusions. The circle, the spiral, the square, and the divine ratio are not inventions of culture, but discoveries of a universal order, a hidden framework that different civilizations simply gave their own unique names and myths. This points to a shared human intuition, a hardwired appreciation for balance and pattern that is baked into our very neurology, compelling us to recreate the harmony we sense in nature in the temples and tombs we build. This shared language of form then becomes a powerful key for re-evaluating history itself, moving us away from a fragmented view of isolated cultures and toward a more unified, awe-inspiring narrative of human ingenuity. For too long, Western academia has often presented history as a series of separate, ascending lines: the Egyptian chapter, the Greek chapter, the Mesopotamian chapter. But when you overlay the geometric blueprints of their greatest achievements, a different story emerges, one of parallel discovery and a collective human awakening to cosmic truths. Seeing the same Pythagorean principles at work in both the megaliths of Europe and the pyramids of Mesoamerica doesn't diminish any one culture, it elevates them all. It reveals a common thread of intellectual and spiritual ambition that connects humanity across continents and millennia. We begin to see a global community of ancient thinkers, all gazing at the same stars, pondering the same mysteries of existence, and expressing their insights through the same silent, perfect language of mathematics and form. This perspective fosters a deep sense of connection and respect, replacing outdated notions of advanced versus primitive civilizations with a recognition of a shared, brilliant human genius. This interconnectedness also opens the door to the tantalizing possibility of subtle, long-lost channels of exchange that we have yet to fully uncover. While direct contact between Egypt and Central America remains speculative, the flow of ideas across interconnected regions was likely more fluid than we once believed. The geometric knowledge perfected in Mesopotamia undoubtedly traveled along trade routes, influencing Greek thinkers who would later formalize it. These ideas could have then filtered slowly across continents through generations of merchants, travelers, and artisans. A motif discovered in Indian temple art might appear years later in a Persian rug, its geometric essence preserved even as its decorative style changed. This doesn't require a grand conspiracy or lost super-civilization. It simply acknowledges that powerful ideas have wings. The geometric principles themselves are so fundamental and so effective that they act as a universal currency of thought, easily transferred and adapted, allowing for a slow, osmotic cultural exchange that enriched every civilization it touched, creating a rich, intertwined tapestry of global knowledge long before the term globalization was ever coined. Ultimately, this recognition of our geometric unity does more than rewrite history books. It offers a crucial, timely lesson for our modern world. In an era often defined by division and emphasis on our differences, sacred geometry reminds us of a profound and ancient common ground. Beneath the surface-level variations of language, custom, and belief, we find that humanity has always been united by a common pursuit, a quest for meaning, a desire to understand our place in the cosmos, and an innate drive to create beauty and order from chaos. The pyramid builder in Egypt and the mandala creator in India were engaged in the same essential project, using the shared language of the universe to build a bridge between the earthly and the divine. This understanding invites a more humble and inclusive view of knowledge, where wisdom is not owned by any one culture but is a shared heritage of all humankind. It encourages us to look for the underlying patterns that connect us, rather than the superficial differences that divide us, revealing that the blueprint for a harmonious world may have been with us all along, encoded in the timeless shapes we have always found most sacred. Sacred geometry stands as a profound testament to humanity's unending quest for understanding, a brilliant thread weaving together the empirical truths of science, the expressive beauty of art, and the transcendent longing of spirituality into a single, coherent blueprint for civilization itself. This is not merely a historical footnote. It is the story of how we, as a species, have consistently reached for the stars using the language of shapes, using the compass and the square to map the architecture of the cosmos and our place within it. From the awesome, silent pyramids of Giza, aligned with celestial precision, to the harmonic perfection of the Parthenon, designed to elevate the human spirit, these geometric principles were the silent conductors guiding ancient societies. They were the tools used to build more than just structures. They were used to create resonant vessels that embodied a universal cosmic order and facilitated a tangible connection to the divine, making the infinite feel intimate and the mysterious feel knowable. As we now rediscover and reconnect with this ancient wisdom, we find that its lessons are not locked in the past. They pulse with a vibrant relevance for our incredibly complex modern world. In an era often defined by fragmentation, noise, and disconnection, the core tenets of sacred geometry offer a powerful antidote. They whisper to us of harmony, the innate balance found in nature's patterns, a balance we so desperately need to reintroduce into our lives, our communities, and our relationship with the planet. They speak of innovation, reminding us that true genius often lies not in overpowering nature, but in observing and understanding its deep, elegant rules. And perhaps most importantly, they illuminate our profound interconnectedness, showing us through the repeating patterns in a nautilus shell, a galaxy, and an ancient mandala that we are all part of a single, beautifully woven tapestry of existence. Let this journey be more than just a history lesson. Let it be an invitation to slow down and truly look at the world around you. Notice the spiral of a fern frond unfurling in a park, the perfect symmetry of a snowflake on your window, the way the setting sun frames a city street in a moment of golden ratio perfection. These are not coincidences, they are echoes of that universal blueprint. We want to hear how this resonates with you. Does this change how you see the architecture in your own city? Does it inspire you to rearrange a room for better harmony, or simply to appreciate the hidden order in everyday life? Share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below. Let's continue this fascinating conversation together. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of history's greatest mysteries. If you enjoyed unlocking these secrets with us, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel for many more journeys into the